Welcome to this tutorial from LingExam Language Academy. Today we're going to explore one of the most common and important topics you'll encounter in IELTS Speaking Part 1, which is talking about your home and accommodation. This is a topic that appears very frequently in the exam, and the good news is that it's something personal and familiar to you, which means you already have plenty to say. The challenge is learning how to say it in a way that demonstrates your English skills effectively. So let's dive in and discover how you can talk about where you live with confidence and fluency. Let's start by understanding why the IELTS examiners love to ask about your home and accommodation. The speaking test is designed to assess how well you can communicate in English about everyday situations. Your home is something you know intimately. It's part of your daily life. You wake up there, you relax there, and you probably spend a significant amount of your time there. This makes it an ideal topic for the examiner to begin the conversation. When you talk about your home, you're showing the examiner several important skills. First, you're demonstrating your ability to describe physical spaces. This includes talking about the layout of your home, its size, and its special features. Second, you're using adjectives and spatial expressions, which are important vocabulary elements. Third, you're showing that you understand natural word combinations, what we call collocations, like when we say a quiet neighbourhood or a spacious living room. These word partnerships sound natural to native speakers, and using them correctly shows that your English is developing well. Now, what kinds of questions can you expect about home and accommodation in IELTS Speaking Part 1? The questions usually fall into several categories. The examiner might ask about the type of home you live in, whether it's a house or an apartment. They might ask you to describe the features of your home or its layout. They often ask about your neighbourhood or the area surrounding your home. Questions about how long you've lived there are also very common. And sometimes they'll ask if you have any plans to move or if there's anything you'd like to change about your current living situation. Let me give you some specific examples of questions you might hear. The examiner might ask, do you live in a house or an apartment? Can you describe your home? What do you like about your neighbourhood? Have you lived there for a long time? Is there anything you would like to change about your home? By preparing answers for these types of questions, you'll feel much more confident when the topic comes up in your actual test. Let's start with the most basic question, which is about the type of home you live in. Imagine the examiner asks you, do you live in a house or an apartment? A good answer might sound like this. I live in a small apartment in the city centre. It's on the 5th floor of a modern building and has 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and a cosy living room. I like it because it's close to everything, shops, restaurants and public transport. Now, why does this answer work well? First, it uses descriptive adjectives like small, modern and cosy. These words help paint a picture in the examiner's mind. Second, it includes spatial information. When you say 5th floor or city centre, you're showing that you can describe locations accurately. Third, it expands the answer with a personal opinion. You're not just answering the question with a simple yes or no. You're explaining why you like living there, which makes your answer more interesting and shows better communication skills. Let me give you more examples so you can see the variety of ways to answer this question. If you live in a house, you might say, I live in a 2-story house in the suburbs with my family. It's a detached house with a small garden in the front and a larger one in the back. We've painted it white with blue shutters, and it has a very welcoming feel. I particularly enjoy having outdoor space where we can have barbecues in the summer. Or perhaps you live in a different situation. You might say, I currently live in a shared apartment with 2 roommates near the university. It's a 3-bedroom flat on the ground floor of an older building. The rent is affordable, and the location is really convenient for getting to my classes. We've made it quite comfortable, even though it's not very big. Notice how each of these answers gives specific details, uses descriptive language, and adds personal feelings or opinions. There are some really useful phrases and collocations you should practice using when describing where you live. You can start with I live in a, and then add details like a small flat, a detached house, or a 2-story house. When talking about location, use phrases like it's located in, followed by descriptions such as a quiet area, the city centre, or the suburbs. To describe what your home has, use the structure it has, and then list features like 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, or a balcony. When expressing your opinion, say I like it because, and give reasons such as it's convenient, it's comfortable, or it's well lit. Another great phrase is it's within walking distance of, which shows that important places are nearby. For example, it's within walking distance of the metro station, or it's within walking distance of several supermarkets. Now let's move on to describing the features of your home in more detail. If the examiner asks, can you describe your home? You want to give a fuller picture. Here's an example of a strong answer. Sure. My home is a 2-bedroom apartment with a large kitchen and an open-plan living room. The walls are painted light grey and there's plenty of natural light. We also have a small balcony that overlooks a park, which I love. This answer works because it mentions the layout of the home clearly. It uses visual and spatial details like the colour of the walls, the amount of light, and the view from the balcony. And it adds a personal touch with emotion at the end by saying, which I love. This makes the answer feel genuine and engaging. Let me give you more examples of how to describe different types of homes. Imagine you live in a traditional house. You might say, my house is quite traditional in style. It has 3 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom on each floor. Downstairs, there's a cosy living room with a fireplace, which is wonderful in winter, and a dining room that connects to the kitchen. The kitchen itself is fairly old-fashioned but very functional. We also have a small utility room where we keep the washing machine. Or perhaps you live in a more modern space. You could say, I live in a studio apartment, which means everything is in one open space except for the bathroom. It's decorated in a minimalist style with white walls and wooden floors. I have a sofa bed that serves as both my seating area and my bedroom. The kitchen is compact but well equipped with modern appliances. Even though it's small, it feels quite spacious because of the high ceilings and large windows. When describing your home, adjectives are incredibly important. Let me give you a range of useful adjectives organized by what they describe. For talking about size and space, you can use words like spacious, which means large and roomy, or cozy, which suggests small but comfortable. Modern describes something contemporary and up-to-date, while traditional refers to older, classic styles. When talking about light, use bright for lots of light or dark for limited light. Airy suggests good ventilation and openness, while warm can describe both temperature and atmosphere. For describing the atmosphere of a neighbourhood, noisy means there's a lot of sound, quiet or peaceful means it's calm, and crowded suggests many people. When talking about furnishings, furnished means it comes with furniture. Unfurnished means empty. Well-equipped means it has everything you need. And minimalist describes a simple, uncluttered style. There are also some useful sentence structures you should practice. Use there is or there are to list features. For example, there are 2 bedrooms and a study, or there is a garden with fruit trees. You can describe the decoration style by saying it's decorated in a followed by the style, such as it's decorated in a modern style or it's decorated in a rustic style. To highlight what you love most, say, the best thing about my home is, and then explain. For instance, the best thing about my home is the natural light that comes through the large windows. Or the best thing about my home is how quiet it is despite being in the city. Let's talk about describing your neighbourhood, because this is another common question area. If the examiner asks, "What do you like about your neighbourhood?" you want to describe not just your home, but the area around it. Here's a good example answer. I live in a very peaceful neighbourhood with lots of trees and green spaces. There's a park nearby where people often go jogging or take their kids to play. It's also quite safe, which makes it a nice place to live. This answer uses adjectives to describe the area, like peaceful, safe, and green. It includes specific places, such as the park, which makes the description concrete and believable. And it adds opinion and reasoning by explaining why these features matter. Let me give you more examples of describing different types of neighbourhoods. If you live in a busy urban area, you might say, "My neighbourhood is quite lively and bustling. There are always people on the streets, and you can find shops, cafes, and restaurants on almost every corner. It's very convenient because everything you need is right there." The public transport connections are excellent too, with a bus stop just outside my building and a metro station 5 minutes away. I enjoy the energy of the area, although sometimes it can be a bit noisy, especially on weekend nights. Or perhaps you live somewhere quieter. You could say, "I live in a residential area on the outskirts of the city. It's very family-friendly, with good schools nearby and several playgrounds. The streets are tree-lined and peaceful, and most people know their neighbours. There's a real sense of community here. We have a small shopping centre about 10 minutes away by car, which has all the essential stores. It's not as convenient as living in the centre, but the trade-off is worth it for the peace and space." There are excellent phrases for describing neighbourhoods that you should learn. When talking about the people, say a friendly community to suggest neighbours are welcoming and sociable. For describing the atmosphere, use a quiet area for somewhere calm, a lively area for somewhere with lots of activity, or a busy area for somewhere with lots of traffic and people. The phrase "within walking distance of" is very useful. You can say within walking distance of schools, within walking distance of shops, or within walking distance of the beach. Another great phrase is close to amenities, which means near to useful facilities and services. You can also say well connected to describe good transport links. When talking about the type of area, use family-friendly for areas good for children, residential for areas that are mainly homes, or commercial district for areas with businesses and offices. Now let's discuss how to talk about how long you've lived somewhere, because this requires specific grammar. If the examiner asks, "How long have you lived in your current home?" you need to use the present perfect tense. Here's a model answer. I've been living here for about 3 years. I moved in right after I started my job. It's been a great place to live, and I've gotten to know my neighbours quite well. This answer uses the present perfect continuous tense appropriately with I've been living here for. It adds context by explaining when and why you moved, saying right after I started my job, and it expresses a personal connection to the place by mentioning relationships with neighbours. Let me give you more examples with different time periods. If you've lived somewhere a long time, you might say, I've lived in this house since I was born. Actually, my parents bought it before I was even born, so it's been my home for my entire life. I know every corner of the neighbourhood, and I have so many memories connected to this place. It's hard to imagine living anywhere else. Or, if you're relatively new, you could say, I only moved into my current apartment about 6 months ago. Before that, I was living with my parents, but I wanted more independence. It's still quite new to me, and I'm still discovering the area and finding the best places to shop and eat. I'm really enjoying having my own space, though. The grammar for time expressions is important to get right. Use I've lived here since, followed by a specific point in time, like since 2020 or since last March. Use I've been living here for followed by a duration, such as for 5 years or for several months. When talking about when you moved, use the past simple tense. Say, I moved in, followed by a time expression like last year, 3 years ago, or when I started university. To give your overall impression, use it's been followed by an adjective phrase, such as it's been a nice place, it's been a good experience, or it's been challenging at times. Sometimes the examiner will ask about changes or improvements you'd like to make. If they ask, is there anything you'd like to change about your home? This is your chance to use conditional structures. Here's an example answer. Yes, I'd love to have a bit more space. The living room is a bit small, especially when friends come over. If I had the chance, I'd also like to renovate the kitchen to make it more modern. This answer expresses a hypothetical wish. Using I'd love to have, it adds details about specific changes, explaining exactly what the problem is and what you do about it. And it uses conditional structures with if I had the chance, which is the second conditional for imaginary situations. Let me give you more examples of talking about improvements. You might say, if I could change one thing, it would be to have a garden. Living in an apartment means we don't have any outdoor space, and I really miss being able to sit outside on nice days. I'd love to grow some plants and vegetables if I had the opportunity. Or perhaps you're happy with your home. You could say, honestly, I'm quite satisfied with my home as it is. Of course, it would be nice to have an extra bedroom for guests, but that's not essential. The only thing I might change is to repaint some of the rooms because the colours are a bit dated. But overall, I don't have any major complaints. Useful phrases for this type of question include I wish I had, followed by what you want, like I wish I had more storage space or I wish I had better heating. You can use I'd like to change, such as I'd like to change the flooring or I'd like to change the layout. The conditional if I could, I would is very useful. For example, if I could, I would add another bathroom. Or if I could, I would install air conditioning. To express desire, say it would be great to have, like it would be great to have a balcony, or it would be great to have more natural light. Now let me give you some important tips for talking about home and accommodation in your IELTS speaking test. First, practice with real-life vocabulary. Use words that you naturally use when describing your home, but try to add a few more advanced adjectives or collocations to make your language richer. Don't use words you don't understand just because they sound impressive. It's better to use simpler words correctly than complex words incorrectly. Second, structure your answer clearly. When describing your home, mention the type of home it is, its features, its location, and your feelings about it. This gives your answer a logical flow that's easy to follow. Third, use the right tense for each situation. Use the present simple for describing what your home is like now. For example, my apartment has 2 bedrooms. Use the present perfect for talking about how long you've lived there, such as I've lived here for 5 years. Use conditionals for talking about things you'd like to change, like if I could, I would add a garden. Fourth, and this is really important, don't memorize answers word for word. Examiners are trained to recognize when candidates have memorized scripts, and it can negatively affect your score. Instead, prepare ideas and vocabulary, but speak naturally about your own real situation. If you don't live in a house with a garden, don't pretend you do. Talk about where you actually live. The examiner isn't judging whether your home is nice or not. They're judging how well you can communicate about it in English. Fifth, personalize your responses. Always include why you like or don't like something. This adds depth to your answers and shows that you can express opinions and give reasons, which are important skills. Instead of just saying, I live in a quiet neighborhood, add because I prefer peace and quiet, or although sometimes I wish there were more things to do nearby. Let me give you some practice questions that you can use to prepare. Try answering these out loud, recording yourself if possible, or write them down and then speak them. First, do you live in a house or an apartment? Remember to describe the type, give some features, mention the location, and add your opinion. Second, what's your favorite room in your home and why? This question lets you focus on one specific space and really describe it in detail. Talk about what's in the room, how it's decorated, what you use it for, and why you like it best. Third, is your neighborhood a good place for families? This requires you to think about facilities, safety, schools, parks, and community atmosphere. Fourth, do you plan to move to a new place soon? This lets you talk about future plans, using future tenses, and explain your reasons. Fifth, what kind of house would you like to live in the future? This is great for practicing conditional and future forms, and for using your imagination to describe your ideal home. Let me give you a full example answer for one of these questions so you can hear how all these elements come together. The question is, what's your favorite room in your home and why? Here's a complete answer. My favorite room is definitely the living room. It's the largest room in our apartment and gets lots of sunlight in the afternoon because it faces west. We've furnished it with a comfortable sofa, a couple of armchairs, and a coffee table. There's also a bookshelf along one wall that's filled with books and family photos. What I love most about this room is that it's where we spend time together as a family. In the evenings, we gather there to watch TV, chat about our day, or just relax. The atmosphere is always warm and welcoming. We've decorated it in neutral colours, mainly beige and cream, which makes it feel calm and peaceful. There's also a small balcony that opens from the living room, which is nice for getting fresh air. Overall, it's the heart of our home, and I feel most comfortable there. Notice how this answer is detailed but natural. It describes the room's features, explains what's in it, uses descriptive vocabulary, expresses personal feelings, and gives reasons for the preference. This is the kind of full, developed answer that impresses examiners. It's not too short, but it's also not overly long or complicated. It's just right for IELTS Speaking Part 1. Another important aspect is using linking words and phrases to make your speech flow smoothly. When you're describing your home, use words like also and as well, and in addition to add information. For example, my apartment has 2 bedrooms. It also has a spacious kitchen and a small balcony. Use words like because, since, and as to give reasons. For instance, I like my neighbourhood because it's very safe and quiet. Use although, however, and but to show contrast. For example, my home is quite small, but it's very cosy and comfortable. Use words like first, second, and finally when listing things. For instance, there are several things I like about my area. First, it's close to public transport. Second, there are lots of shops nearby. And finally, the neighbours are very friendly. Let me give you one more complete example that brings together all the techniques we've discussed. Imagine the examiner asks, "Can you tell me about where you live?" Here's a comprehensive answer. I live in a 3-bedroom house in a suburban area about 30 minutes from the city centre. It's a semi-detached house, which means it shares one wall with the house next door. We've lived there for about 8 years now, ever since my youngest sister was born. The house has 2 floors. Downstairs, there's a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, as well as a small bathroom. Upstairs, there are 3 bedrooms and a larger bathroom. My favourite feature is probably the back garden. It's not huge, but it's big enough for us to have a small vegetable patch and some flowers. In the summer, we often have barbecues there. The neighbourhood is really family-oriented. There are several schools nearby, a community centre, and a park where children play. Most of the families have lived there for years, so everyone knows each other. It's very safe and peaceful, although it can be a bit quiet sometimes. I occasionally wish we were closer to the city centre where there's more entertainment. But overall, it's a great place to live, especially for families. This answer demonstrates many strong features. It gives a clear overview of the type and location of the home. It describes the layout systematically, floor by floor. It mentions specific features like the garden and explains why they're important. It describes the neighbourhood and community. It uses appropriate time expressions with the present perfect. It includes personal opinions and even a slight criticism, which shows balanced thinking. And it uses a variety of vocabulary and sentence structures. This is the kind of answer that would receive a high score. As we come to the end of this podcast, let's recap the key points. Home and accommodation is one of the most common and approachable topics in IELTS Speaking Part 1. It allows you to speak confidently using descriptive language, share personal opinions, and demonstrate your vocabulary and grammar range. To perform well with this topic, learn key adjectives and collocations to describe spaces and places. Practice speaking about your own living situation in full sentences, not just short phrases. Use time expressions and spatial language accurately. Remember to structure your answers clearly. Use the appropriate tenses, personalize your responses with opinions and reasons, and speak naturally rather than reciting memorized scripts. Congratulations on completing this lesson. You've learned so much about how to talk about your home and accommodation effectively. You now have the vocabulary, the grammar structures, and the strategies you need to answer these questions confidently in your IELTS speaking test. But learning doesn't stop here. Let me give you some step-by-step review strategies to help you remember and apply what you've learned today. First, listen to this podcast again, but this time pause after each example answer and try to repeat it out loud. This will help you internalize the pronunciation and rhythm of natural English. Second, write down answers to all the practice questions we discussed using your own real-life situation. Don't copy the examples exactly. Use them as models, but make the content your own. Third, record yourself speaking your answers. Listen back and notice where you hesitate, where you make mistakes, or where you could add more detail. Then record again and try to improve. Fourth, practice with a friend or study partner. Take turns asking each other the questions and giving feedback. Fifth, expand your vocabulary by creating a personal list of adjectives and phrases that describe your actual home and neighborhood. Review this list regularly until the words feel natural to use. Remember, the key to success in IELTS speaking is practice, practice, practice. The more you speak, the more confident and fluent you'll become. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're a natural part of learning. What matters is that you keep trying and keep improving. If you found this lesson helpful and want to take your IELTS preparation even further, I encourage you to visit the LingExam Language Academy website. At lingexam.com, you'll find a wealth of resources designed to help you improve your English knowledge and skills. Whether you're preparing for IELTS or simply want to become more confident in English, LingExam has courses, practice materials, and expert guidance to support your learning journey. And here's some great news. If you want to study IELTS Speaking Part 1 much deeper to guarantee your high band score, you can visit our website and study with our dedicated course called Mastering IELTS Speaking Part 1, and the best part is that it's completely free. This comprehensive course covers all the common topics, provides extensive practice questions, gives you model answers, and teaches you the strategies you need to excel in this part of the test. Don't miss this opportunity to boost your speaking skills and achieve the score you need. Thank you so much for joining me today at LingExam Language Academy. I wish you the very best in your IELTS preparation and in all your English learning goals. Keep practicing, stay confident, and remember that every bit of effort you put in brings you closer to success. Good luck, and I hope to see you again soon in another lesson.